It was the 14th of February, a Friday night. Most people were out celebrating, but a 24-year-old graduate student was alone in her apartment, studying for an exam she would never take. At 10:52 p.m., her phone lit up with a message. She read it, started typing a response, then stopped. At 11:18 p.m., she sent her roommate a single text. If anything happens, it wasn't an accident. Her roommate, who was 3 hours away visiting family, assumed it was exam stress. By midnight, the graduate student's phone was sending messages to multiple friends, but the messages didn't sound like her. The phrasing was wrong, and by 9:47 a.m., her phone went offline. She was never seen alive again. 3 weeks later, I was contacted by her best friend. She said everyone was calling it a Valentine's Day tragedy. A young woman who couldn't handle being alone on the holiday, who had sent dramatic messages and disappeared. But her best friend said that wasn't true, that the messages were wrong, that the timeline didn't make sense, that someone had been watching her apartment for weeks. She asked me to find the pattern the police were ignoring. What I found was 6 months of escalation that ended the moment she refused to answer the door on a night when everyone else was supposed to be happy. My name is Rafe Quinn. I investigate things that do not fit. This case came to me in March of 2020. The crime itself had happened on the 14th of February of that year. A woman named Claire Novak had disappeared from her apartment in Eugene, Oregon. Her body was found 4 days later in a wooded area 20 miles outside the city. Her ex-boyfriend, Ethan Cross, became the primary suspect. But by the time I was contacted, no arrest had been made. The investigation had stalled. The police said they didn't have enough evidence. Claire's best friend, Morgan, said they weren't looking at the right evidence. I told her I would look. Claire Novak was 24 years old in February of 2020. She was finishing her master's degree in environmental science. She had been accepted to a PhD program at UC Berkeley, starting that fall. She was planning to move to California in August. Her professors said she was focused, serious about her work, someone who had clear goals and the discipline to achieve them. But Morgan told me something different. She said Claire had spent the last year trying to untangle herself from someone who refused to let go. Claire and Ethan had dated for 2 years. They met during their senior year of college. Morgan said it seemed fine at first. Ethan was attentive. He wanted to spend time with her. He texted her throughout the day, but over time, attentive became intrusive. Morgan said Ethan needed to know where Claire was at all times, who she was with, what she was doing. If she went to the library, he would show up. If she went to a friend's house, he would text her every 20 minutes asking when she'd be home. Claire broke up with him 3 times. Each time, Ethan would send long messages, paragraphs about how much he loved her, how he couldn't function without her, how he would change. And each time, Claire would believe him. Morgan said Claire felt responsible, that Ethan made her feel like his emotional stability depended on her presence. But in the fall of 2019, Claire made a final decision. She told Ethan it was over. She blocked his number. She told her friends she was done. Morgan believed her this time. Claire seemed lighter, more focused. She was excited about California, about starting over somewhere. Ethan couldn't find her, but Ethan had not accepted it. Morgan showed me messages Ethan had sent from different phone numbers. Some were apologetic, some were angry. In one message he wrote, "You think you can just erase 2 years like it meant nothing." In another, "Everyone sees what you are doing. You're not fooling anyone." Morgan said Claire stopped responding, stopped engaging completely, but the messages kept coming. In January, Claire's downstairs neighbor reported seeing someone sitting in a car outside the building late at night. Several nights in a row, the neighbor couldn't see who it was, just that the car would park across the street around 11 p.m. and stay for hours. Claire told Morgan she thought it was Ethan, but she didn't want to call the police. She didn't think they would do anything. She just wanted him to move on. Then came February. Valentine's Day fell on a Friday that year. Morgan told me Claire had been anxious about it all week. Not because she was sad about being single, but because she was worried Ethan would try something. She told Morgan, "He is going to show up. I know he is. He'll think it is romantic or something." Morgan told her to go stay somewhere else that night. But Claire said no. She had an exam on Monday. She needed to study. She wasn't going to let Ethan control her schedule. On the morning of the 14th of February, Claire went to class. She came home around 2 p.m. Her roommate, who was leaving town to visit her boyfriend, saw Claire in the apartment. They talked briefly. The roommate said Claire seemed fine, maybe a little stressed about the exam, but fine. The roommate left around 3 p.m. She wouldn't return until Sunday night. Claire spent the afternoon studying. At 6:47 p.m., she posted on social media a photo of her notes with the caption, "Valentine's date with biochemistry." Friends commented. She replied to a few. Everything seemed normal. At 8:34 p.m., Claire ordered food delivery. The driver left it her door. Security footage from the building's entrance shows Claire opening the door at 8:41 p.m. to retrieve the bag. She is wearing sweatpants and a hoodie. She looks tired but calm. She goes back inside. The door closes. That is the last time anyone saw her alive. At 10:52 p.m., Claire's phone showed activity. A message came in from an unknown number. The police were later able to determine it was from a prepaid phone purchased with cash 2 days earlier. The message said, "I am outside. Let me in. We need to talk." There is no record of Claire responding, but at 11:03 p.m., her phone pinged off a cell tower, indicating she was still in her apartment. At 11:18 p.m., Claire sent a text to her roommate. It said, "If anything happens, it wasn't an accident." The roommate was at her boyfriend's apartment 3 hours away. She was watching a movie. She didn't see the message until later. When she did, she tried calling Claire. No answer. She texted back, "What is going on?" No response. Between 11:34 p.m. and 1:47 a.m., Claire's phone sent messages to 7 different friends. Each message was slightly different, but the theme was consistent. She was sorry. She needed space. She was leaving Eugene. She wasn't going to California, after all. One message said, "I can't do this anymore." Another said, "Tell everyone I am fine." Another said, "Don't look for me." Morgan received one of these messages at 12:16 a.m. She called Claire immediately. The call went to voicemail. Morgan texted back, "This doesn't sound like you. Are you okay?" No response. Morgan called again and again. Nothing. At 1:47 a.m., Claire's phone went offline. It never came back on. The next morning, Saturday, the 15th of February, Claire didn't respond to any messages. By Saturday afternoon, Morgan drove to Claire's apartment. She knocked. No answer. She called the building manager. The manager opened the door. The apartment was empty. Claire's laptop was on the kitchen table. Her backpack was by the door. Her keys were on the counter. But Claire was gone. Her car was still in the parking garage. Her phone was nowhere to be found. Morgan called the police. Officers came and filed a missing person report. They noted the strange messages. They asked about Claire's mental health, whether she had been depressed, whether she might have harmed herself. Morgan said no, that wasn't Claire. Claire had plans. She was excited about California. Something was wrong. Detectives pulled Claire's phone records. The messages had been sent from her phone, but when they analyzed the content, several people noted inconsistencies. Claire rarely used contractions in texts. She was careful with grammar, but these messages had errors, small things. Missing apostrophes, run-on sentences. Morgan said the tone was wrong too, Claire wasn't dramatic. She didn't send cryptic messages. If she wanted space, she would say so directly. Detectives focused on Ethan almost immediately. Claire's friends had told them about the relationship, about the breakup, about the messages he'd been sending. Officers went to Ethan's apartment on Sunday morning. He wasn't home. They called him. He didn't answer. Finally, on Sunday evening, he returned their call. He said he'd been out of town, that he'd driven to the coast on Thursday night to clear his head, that he hadn't seen Claire in months. Detectives asked where on the coast. He said Newport. He'd stayed at a motel. They asked for the name. He gave them one. They called. The motel had no record of him. Ethan changed his story. Said he'd actually slept in his car, in a parking lot overlooking the ocean. He didn't have any receipts. He paid for gas with cash. There was no way to verify any of it. On the 18th of February, a hiker found Claire's body in a forested area along Highway 126, about 20 miles east of Eugene. She was partially concealed under brush. The medical examiner determined she had died from asphyxiation. There were injuries to her neck, defensive wounds on her hands and arms. She had fought. Claire's phone was found near the body. It had been powered off when police accessed it. They found the last outgoing message had been sent at 19:47 a.m. on the 15th of February, the same time. It had gone offline. Detectives brought Ethan in for questioning. He denied everything. He said he hadn't seen Claire, hadn't spoken to her, hadn't gone to her apartment. He maintained he'd been at the coast. But then detectives presented evidence they'd been gathering. Cell tower data. Ethan's phone had been in Eugene on the night of the 14th of February. It had pinged off a tower near Claire's apartment at 10:41 p.m. Then it had gone into airplane mode at 10:58 p.m. It stayed off until 2:22 a.m. when it pinged back on near Highway 126. Surveillance footage from a gas station on Highway 126 showed Ethan's car at 2:34 a.m. He was alone. He purchased a drink and left. More footage from a different camera showed his car driving west, back toward Eugene at 2:51 a.m. Ethan's story began to change. He admitted he'd gone to Claire's apartment. He said he just wanted to talk, that he missed her, that he thought Valentine's Day was a good time to reconnect. He said he texted her from outside, asked her to let him in. She refused. So he left. He said he was upset. So he drove around for a while, ended up on Highway 126, then went home. He said he didn't know what happened to Claire, that he had nothing to do with it. But then detectives found something else. When they searched Ethan's apartment, they found a prepaid phone, the same one used to text Claire at 10:52 p.m. They also found a jacket in his laundry. There was dirt on the sleeves. Soil analysis later matched it to the area where Claire's body was found. And they found something on his laptop, search history from the 12th of February, 2 days before Claire disappeared. He had searched, how long does it take to report someone missing in Oregon? When I reviewed this case, I focused on the timeline. The messages sent from Claire's phone between 11:34 p.m. and 1:47 a.m. weren't random. Each one suggested Claire had left on her own, that she was overwhelmed, that she needed to disappear. If her body hadn't been found, or if it had been found much later, the messages would have supported a different story. But Claire's friends knew the messages were wrong the moment they received them. The phrasing, the tone, the timing. Claire was studying for an exam. She had plans for California. She wasn't someone who sent cryptic goodbye texts in the middle of the night. I went through the digital evidence myself. Claire's laptop had been left open on her kitchen table. Browser history showed she'd been researching for her exam until 10:34 p.m. Then nothing. Her phone's location data showed it remained stationary in her apartment until 12:47 a.m. Then it started moving, east on Highway 126. It stopped moving at 1:39 a.m. 8 minutes later, at 1:47 a.m., it went offline. The cell tower data painted a different picture for Ethan. His phone pinged near Claire's apartment at 10:41 p.m. Then it went into airplane mode at 10:58. For nearly 3.5 hours, there was no digital record of where Ethan's phone was. It came back online at 2:22 a.m., pinging off a tower on Highway 126, approximately 18 miles east of Eugene. I requested traffic camera footage along Highway 126 for that night. Most cameras were positioned at major intersections, not along the rural stretches, but I found one. A Department of Transportation camera monitoring a bridge overpass. At 1:52 a.m., a vehicle matching Ethan's car drove west, back toward Eugene. The license plate was partially obscured, but the make and model matched. The timestamp was 5 minutes after Claire's phone went offline and 11 minutes before it was found near her body. I also pulled records for the prepaid phone that texted Claire at 10:52 p.m. It was purchased at a convenience store in Eugene on the 12th of February. Cash transaction. The store's security camera showed a person wearing a baseball cap and jacket. The footage was grainy, but the build matched Ethan. The phone was activated at 7:34 p.m. on the 14th of February. It sent one text at 10:52 p.m. Then it was never used again. Police found it in Ethan's apartment, still in its packaging, hidden in a desk drawer. There is something else in the evidence. Claire's building had a back entrance, a door that led from the parking garage to the residential floors. This door required a key fob to enter from outside, but once inside the building, residents could exit through it without a key. It was designed as a fire exit. Security footage shows the door opening at 11:27 p.m. on the 14th of February. A figure enters from inside the building. The camera angle doesn't capture a face, just a silhouette. The figure is carrying nothing. They move quickly. The door closes. At 12:09 a.m., the same door opens again. The silhouette exits. This time, carrying something large enough to require both arms. The figure moves toward the parking garage. The camera loses sight of them. Police never found evidence of forced entry at Claire's apartment door. The front door was locked when Morgan and the building manager opened it on Saturday afternoon. Everything inside looked normal, except Claire was gone. I interviewed Claire's downstairs neighbor, the one who had reported seeing someone sitting in a car outside the building in January. She told me the car had returned in February. She noticed it on the 11th of February, then again on the 13th of February, both times late at night. She didn't call the police because she wasn't certain. It was the same car each time, but she was certain someone had been watching the building. I also spoke with another resident, a man who lived on the same floor as Claire. He told me he heard voices in the hallway around 11:30 p.m. on the 14th of February. A man and a woman. The woman's voice sounded stressed. The man's voice was calm, too calm, he said. He couldn't make out words, just tones. He didn't think much of it at the time. Couples argue. He went back to watching television. At 11:43 p.m., he heard a door close, then silence. He assumed whoever it was had gone back inside their apartment. But when police asked him to clarify the timeline, he realized something. He hadn't heard footsteps after the door closed. No one walked past his apartment toward the elevator. No one walked toward the stairwell, which meant whoever closed the door had stayed in the hallway or gone the other direction toward the back exit. The forensic timeline suggests Claire sent her last genuine message at 11:18 p.m. If anything happens, it wasn't an accident. 16 minutes later, someone was in the hallway outside her apartment. 23 minutes after that, someone sent the first fake message from her phone. I can't do this anymore. Over the next hour and 36 minutes, 6 more messages were sent, each one designed to suggest Claire had left voluntarily. But the pattern of those messages reveals something. They weren't sent continuously. They were sent in clusters. 3 messages between 11:34 p.m. and 11:52 p.m. A 16-minute gap, then 2 more messages at 12:08 a.m. and 12:16 a.m. Another 31-minute gap, then 2 final messages at 12:47 a.m. and 1:03 a.m. The gaps matter. They suggest someone was doing something else between sending messages. Driving, possibly. Moving something. Returning to send another message to maintain the narrative. Claire's phone was found 20 feet from where her body was discovered. It had been wiped clean of fingerprints, but the SIM card was still inside. Data recovery specialists were able to pull deleted files. Draft messages that were never sent. Most were mundane. Reminders to herself. Notes for her thesis, but there was one draft from the 13th of February, the day before she disappeared. It said, "I think he is outside again." She never sent it. Police don't know who it was intended for, but the timestamp was 11:47 p.m. on the 13th of February, almost exactly 24 hours before the first fake message was sent from her phone. Morgan told me something that stayed with me. She said that 3 weeks before Claire died, they had been talking about relationships, about red flags. And Claire had said, "I think the scariest thing is when someone loves you so much they can't imagine a world where you are not with them, because what happens when you want to leave?" Morgan said she didn't understand what Claire meant, but now she does. The case remains open. Ethan Cross has been charged, but not tried. His attorney maintains the evidence is circumstantial. That cell tower data proves location, not action. That dirt on a jacket is not a confession. That search history is curiosity, not planning. Claire's friends are not waiting for a verdict to know what happened. They saw the pattern for months, the messages that wouldn't stop, the car parked outside her building, the refusal to accept what she kept telling him. I think about the message Claire sent her roommate at 11:18 p.m. If anything happens, it wasn't an accident. 10 words. She knew someone was outside. She knew what might happen, and she left a record. 29 minutes later, her phone started sending messages that didn't sound like her. 2 hours after that, her phone went offline on a highway 20 miles from her apartment. 4 days later, her body was found in the woods nearby. The pattern shows someone who spent months watching, who purchased a prepaid phone 2 days before the 14th of February, who turned his own phone to airplane mode at the exact moment he needed to disappear from the digital record, who searched. How long does it take to report someone missing? 48 hours before someone went missing. The patterns are not confessions. They are threads. And the justice system requires more than threads. What Claire's friends know is this. She tried to leave. She blocked his number. She told people she was afraid. She made plans for California. And on a night when most people were celebrating, someone made sure those plans never happened. The last person to see Claire alive was a delivery driver at 8:41 p.m. Security footage shows her retrieving food from her doorstep. She is wearing sweatpants. Her hair is tied back. She looks tired. She closes the door and disappears from view. 3 hours later, someone sent a text from her phone. "Don't look for me." But Claire had already told people to look. She'd said, if anything happens, she'd left a trail. She'd done everything she was supposed to do. It wasn't enough. Valentine's Day is supposed to be about love, about connection, about 2 people choosing to be together. But for Claire Novak, the 14th of February was about someone who couldn't accept that she had chosen to be apart. The investigation continues. The evidence is being reviewed. The trial date keeps getting pushed, and Claire's apartment has been rented to someone else. The back entrance where the security camera captured a silhouette still opens to the parking garage. The cell tower that pinged Ethan's phone at 10:41 p.m. is still standing. But Claire is gone, and the person who said he loved her is the last person whose phone was near her apartment the night she disappeared.